the Cyclops, and to your point, the Cyclops isn't even from Krull, but he knows he has to be there in order to die there.
How'd he get there? Does he have a spaceship?
I have been asking that question for so long, which is like, okay, so, he comes from another world. And I love how Ynir just drops that and
casually
nobody reacts.
Right. That's a very common thing on Krull. This guy's from a different planet. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
In our experience of the film, the Black Fortress comes to Krull, it lands, and now you have the alien invaders, right? And then things go into motion. But the truth is, from what we know from the liner notes, this is not the first time that a beast has come to Krull. Yes. And that we could argue that that's where Ynir got the opportunity to fulfill the prophecy the first time. So they've seen alien invaders before. And there's also no indication of how much time has passed since the alien invaders have arrived.
Yeah.
But we know that they are ravaging the countryside. They've taken over the passes. They've done some work. The fortress is hopping all over the planet every sunrise, doing harm and burning villages and taking over. So we don't know how long this has been going on when we get to the events of the wedding, the original Red Wedding, as I like to call it. But that, and we also know that the kingdom of Turold and the kingdom of Eirig, who are like Rome, they're Capulets and Montagues.
Yeah.
They have a rivalry that runs anciently. But if you look at the armor for both kingdoms, they're almost the exact same thing.
Very similar. Yeah.
Just a color palette swap.
Definitely not a budget choice. It's definitely an in-world mythology thing. Yeah.
Yes. Taking the film as our primary source of truth, and the book and the liner notes and other elements, the comic books that you have on your wall, the children's book, all that, taking all of that into account together with the film being sort of the glue that holds it all together and verifies things. It's also important to note that they're wearing like this plastoid armor, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the only thing in the world that looks plastic.
Very high tech. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question becomes, where did that technology come from? Why do only the soldiers of the palace have it? How long have the alien invaders been there? You could take all this into account, and then it does start to make sense that Ynir would just sit there and be like, the Cyclops come from another world. And and nobody bats an eye. They're like, oh yeah, it's because we're not alone in the universe. Of course they come from another world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you then.
Okay.
We've talked about Ynir, we've talked about Rell and the Cyclops. What's a little gem, a little hidden nugget in Krull that you absolutely love that maybe a lot of people just overlook because it's just a moment of exposition, or maybe it's an angle or a scene?
Okay, so I love, this is such a quotable film, right? There are a lot of little just throwaway lines that are just astonishingly good. But I don't want to do just dialogue. I think your question is bigger than dialogue.
But it can be dialogue, and that's okay.
I mean, every single line is perfect. So without recording the entire film, okay, let me think about this. This is tricky. I think that, well, we could talk about the hourglass in the right. So there's an hourglass in the web that Lissa, the widow, turns to stop the spider. But also the sand in that hourglass is her life, which she gives to Ynir until it runs out. I don't even know where to start with that. So there is sand that her life force has been attached to this sand in this hourglass. It can only be turned once, ever. She's never turned it before. How did that happen? Who put her life in that hourglass? How did that happen? Did that happen because she killed her kid? What bargain did she make with what sort of thing to turn her life into the sand of that hourglass? This is an open-ended question. Please tell me. I don't know yet. Like, it's such a cool, weird thing.
It is such a cool, weird thing, and I actually love it. The mystery of it is one of the things that's appealing, because even in all of the sources that I've seen, there is no explanation. You're describing it accurately.
Yeah.
I've fiddled around with theories about this, trying to make something fit, trying to make something stick, right? and I don't have anything as solid as what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
But at least there are some things we could acknowledge along the way.
Mm-hmm.
One is we know that she's in the same age bracket as Ynir. She's Ynir's Lissa, right?
Yeah.
We also know that her little apartment is essentially like a chair, maybe a days to sleep on, and a table, and this table has and a mirror, and this table has an hourglass.
Yep.
I think that there is something wildly poetic in the fact that her punishment has a mirror.
Do you think the same power that makes the widow live so long is the same thing that makes Ynir live so long? Does he have an hourglass somewhere, or are they the same hourglass? Is for some reason both of their sand in that hourglass, which is why he can use it?
I think it's still her life, but what we see is sort of the confirmation that their lives were always intertwined.
They were, yeah.
That they had chosen paths such that their destinies became interwoven and were inextricably now connected. It didn't have to be that way, as we learned from the Cyclops. It doesn't have to be that way. But they had made choices in their youth that caused that weave to occur. And now they were tied to each other. And how does he spend his life? Staying as far from her as he can. And he ultimately can't, right? Eventually he has to, his life doesn't end until he
goes back to deal with.
He reaches sort of what's what I'm looking for? Not redemption, but
closure.
Yeah, he gets closure with her, right? He gains her forgiveness.
Yeah.
The poetry and the beauty of their tragedy. Theirs is the first tragedy of Krull, right? The tragedy in a romantic literary sense is so profound and beautiful. The more you dig at it, the more it digs at you. You know, and so to go back to your question, you asked a simple question that's easy to answer, which is this her punishment for killing her son? Yes. And she says it
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
She 100% just says it out loud. She's all,
this is why.
my punishment.
Yeah.
There is something very interesting that happens when she talks about the sand. She says it can be turned only once. And it's Francesca Honest with this gorgeous British accent and gorgeous British face, but I digress. This gorgeous British accent. She says, that is the lore of the web. Now, she says it with an accent that can be interpreted one of two ways. It's either the lore of the web, or it is the law of the web. And according to the subtitles, and if I'm not mistaken, the book, she actually says law. So
I always heard it as lure. Like that's what makes you want to go in here. The lure of the web.
The lure of the web. You know what?
We're gonna look it up right now while we're talking.
Yes, we should. For the longest time, you're right. That's actually how I interpreted it for a long time, was lure, like bait. So actually 3 ways that could be interpreted.
That is the law of the web, page 164. It may only be turned once. That is the law of the web.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting how she says it? Because it can be.
I always thought it was lure.
Well, what?
I've even read this, and I still think it was lure.
What if in an almost biblical literary sense, what if it's actually all 3?
Yeah, I think
it is the law, it is the lore, it is the lure, right? Like, it works on all 3 levels, which is one of the. I don't know if Francesca Honest did that deliberately outside of just the diphthong in her accent, but it is absolutely beautiful. Ooh, well, now do you have the 6th version of the script?
This is the 3rd draft, November 1980, that I'm looking through currently.
Well, 3rd draft would have been Dragons of Krull, right?
This is the Dragons of Krull, yes.
Do they have the? I apologize. I never finished reading my copy.
How dare you?
Do they have the widow in the Dragons?
I'm reading the widow right now, but I don't see this line in particular, because we have. So it starts on page 69. Nice.
So folks at home, this is a reprint of the 3rd edition of the script that Connor made for me. He bound it by hand and put a glaive on the cover.
I did that, yes.
Yes, it's beautiful and I love it.
Mine is in an old blue folder, which is more accurate to the shooting scripts of the time, but not as cool looking.
It's not as cool looking. Where are you in terms of the script?
Page 70, give or take, is where the scene happens.
Just so you know, the Titch I'd wish for a puppy scene is still the same.
What a foolish wish. So here we have, she breaks the hourglass and pours the sand into his open hand. Before that, no, here we go. So
what page are we on? I'm sorry.
Page 72. The widow is talking about where the fortress of Krull will rise, not the Black Fortress yet. It says Einir touches his glaive, not the glaive, not a glaive, his glaive, and she says it will not help. So I think by this, after this draft, it was changed to the hourglass, which I think then the whole it can only be turned once. It's the lure of the web, the law of the web. Was added later.
No. Okay. Well, you make.
Do you see the law line?
Says, well, let's see. Maybe on 71, because in 72 she gives him the sand. She breaks the hourglass and pours the sand into his hands.
Yeah, 71 is all about.
With that line, dude, the way Francesca Anna says it, "Those are the sands of my life."
Yeah, it's so good.
Like the way she says it, so good.
This whole movie is so good. We've been talking for almost 2 hours.
We've been talking for an hour and a half.
Yeah, and
we've been recording for an hour and a half.
But... Right, we've been talking for much longer than that. I cannot stop the sand. You cannot stop time.
Oh, so good. It's so good.
Yeah, so I think that is a line post this draft. So we don't have a third reference for whether or not it's law or lure or lore. I'm going to stand... put your thoughts down in the comments if comments are a thing on podcasts.
It is on YouTube.
On YouTube. Hey, YouTube. Like and subscribe to this channel. And also, does she say law or lure or lore? Let us know. Let him know. He'll tell me when you write.
All right.
So, I think the MacGuffin of Einir using his glaive to stop the spider was turned into the hourglass once the writers decided there was only one glaive, is my assumption based on that brief rereading that we've just done.
I'd have to read through the script, but my assumption is in very much the Campbell's process of the hero's journey, the idea that like the hero has an elder figure to look to for guidance.
Yes,
it's very much like a Conan style, or if you're like me and you like to watch crappy movies on the side, there's Ator.
Ator. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about that movie for a long time.
Ator is such an uncomfortable film to watch, but the idea that you have these two swordsmen, one who is the pupil, one who is the master, and they are they're doing the forms together. I imagine in this script, if I read the whole thing, Ynir is teaching Colwyn how to use the glaive.
Well, he even says in the film, like, I know the power, you taught it to me, or whatever. Like,
yeah, he does. He goes, I won't forget, you taught it to me.
Also, while we're kind of on the topic, this is how I found Krull. I went on a rampage of just bad 80s sword and sorcery films, right? It was whatever was on whatever streaming service I could find at the time. It was just one after the other for like 3 weeks in a row, years and years and years ago. And then, I was just burning through the list, watched all the classics, and then I got, they're all great, but also awful. And then I got to Krull, and I was like, okay, one more bad movie. Let's do this. I love these. And it just immediately was like, oh, this is actually a very good movie. This is way better than, no offense, Beastmaster. This is way better than that.
It is better than Beastmaster.
And it was just like, oh, this is amazing. And then I watched it like 4 times over the next week, and then I never went back. And now here we are. But that's a different story for a different.
I think I need to get an interview with Mark Singer so I can ask him. So, how did you feel when Krull was better than your movie, but did not perform better than your movie?
Yeah. Does it feel bad that this movie did worse than yours, but is better than yours? How do you feel about that?
Do you feel responsible? No.
Is this your fault?
I will never. Despite the fact that that's how you and I formed a friendship, I don't think that would work on Mark Singer.
That's very funny.
Yeah. So how old do you think you were when you first saw Krull?
That was before we met. So I was in college for sure, early college, maybe first year of college, when I first saw Krull. And I had no idea it existed before. It happened to come up on whatever streaming service I was watching, And it was like, oh, you like these movies? Maybe you'll like this. Like, okay, sure.
You were using a streaming platform to see it at the time?
That is correct. And I'm still annoyed that Keegan gets one final last line about Merith in his death scene, because when I watched it the first time, it was just quiet and you just heard him breathing and it just got quieter. Then he stopped and it was so just heartbreaking. It was the best death scene in a movie I've ever seen. Like, just watching Torquil stare at Colwyn as his buddy dies off screen is like, holy cow, that's a move. And I get it. Like, tell Merith I loved her. Good for you. But it I don't know. I'm not.
It's more entertaining in the book, because in the book he's like, tell Merith I loved her, and tell Luna I loved her, and then Torquil's like, I understand. Torquil, like,
I get it.
He's like, yeah,
I'll tell them all.
That he dies.
That's
but
funny.
I'm with you, because on a subsequent visit to my house, we decided to sit down and we put the Blu-ray in. Do you remember what that experience was like?
It took us like 5.5 hours to watch to watch Krull frame by frame. We saw the scaffolding in the swamp set, and that one shot of Rell as he's running with his spear after the changeling. We noticed that great shot of Anir where he's not moving until the camera pans down far enough, and then he starts running. That was a great time. That was an absolute blast. I loved that.
It was one of my favorite watch throughs, and you're right. It took us like 4 or 5 hours. I think it was.
Yeah, easily
to get through
twice the running time of the film.
Yeah, and and I remember we were the death scene comes up, and then Torquil like looks up, and then you hear Liam Neeson say, tell Merith I loved her.
Yeah.
And then Torquil almost immediately on the heels of that line says, lead on.
Yeah.
And then they move on, right?
Yeah, he's not even dead yet. He was just talking.
Yeah, he was just talking.
Yeah.
I'm not dead yet. Shut up, not playing anyone.
We're going to leave him here. Let's go.
Yeah. I think that scene and the comparison of the original 1983 Return of the Jedi versus the remastered specialized blah, 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 blahs.
Yeah.
When you compare the scene where Darth Vader makes the clear decision to save Luke's life in the original and remember that came out same year before Krull. It came out on May 25th of 1983, and Krull came out July 29th of 1983. And I remember seeing both of those movies in that year in theaters. And I was only 4.5, but you have the scene where Vader goes to save Luke, which, by the way, as a kid whose hero is Luke Skywalker, that was traumatic. That was I was having some emotional reactions to that moment in time when he's being electrocuted, because Mark Hamill does a phenomenal job in that scene.
It's a great scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Hamill's screams are some of the best. Anyway.
Terrifying.
And then Vader stands there, and then he looks, and then he looks back at his son, and then he looks at the Emperor, and then he makes that decision to just get in there. He doesn't say anything. And then in the Blu-ray remastered versions, we hear the now late and great James Earl Jones say, no. And then he gets in there and he like tosses the Emperor. And I'm like, are you stupid? How can you, George Lucas, who I revered for many, many years, how can you look at a beautiful scene in cinematic history and think, well, what we really need here is a little more dialogue?
If only we explained what was happening more out loud.
Maybe we just say it.
Sometimes and it's like, the best dialogue is no dialogue.
That is 100% correct. The movie Up, where we see the lifetime of them together as a couple.
Don't even start with that. I know.
Right?
So
that's Lissa and Ynir, by the way. The extra line for Keegan in Krull's defense.
Yeah.
Hello. The extra line for Keegan was actually part of the UK cut. So when they released it, so they released it in the US first in July on the 29th, which is Graham McGrath's birthday.
That's right.
And then, easy to remember, they released it on December 27th that same year in the UK, which is
that's your birthday. Yeah.
I will now remember 2 birthdays. Anyway,
I will too.
and so when they released it in the UK, they had time to play with the edit. That is the only place in the film where they deviate.
Interesting. I will not. I don't agree with it.
I don't agree.
They're
with
gonna
it
have
either.
to. Yeah. I mean, not that my opinion matters about this movie that came out 30 years ago, but like, they shouldn't have done that.
41 years ago.
You're right.
41 years ago.
What kind of fan am I? I should just see myself out.
You're the second best fan. I'm number 1. But anyway, the point is.
But we'll see, Krebs. Are you in fact the number 1 fan? We'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that. But I want to be the number 1 guy too. And that's when we like devolve into a Yu-Gi-Oh battle. But anyway.
I play Glaive.
It's super effective. I play Beast's viscous chest.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh, okay. So here's a question I want to ask you about that specifically.
The Beast's viscous chest.
Yes, actually.
Okay.
So Colwyn's fighting the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Colwyn's got the Glaive. Yes. Colwyn and the Glaive are vibing. They're connected. They're doing their thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then Colwyn sinks it. Yes, you're going exactly in the right place.
Uh-huh.
Colwyn sinks it. Beast and then falls.
Collapses. Correct.
And then Colwyn reaches for the Glaive. And then we have some of this brilliant James Horner music. We have this moment.
What a score.
Do you remember when you first watched it? How did you interpret that moment? Why didn't Colwyn get the Glaive back? What was going on in that moment?
I, in my brain, always imagined that whatever magic the Beast has that makes the Beast is more powerful than Colwyn's attempts to get the Glaive back. But I also think the Glaive, to a certain extent, as we've discussed, has its own purpose about it. It's got its own plan, right? And so I don't think the Glaive wanted to be retrieved a little bit. You know, I think that it's staying there because it was done. Its purpose with Colwyn is finished. Now it's going to do whatever it's going to do next.
So when I was younger and I saw that scene, I always interpreted, and I interpreted it this way for years, for like over a couple decades, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was stuck.
Sure.
I thought, to your point, like the Beast's anatomy, its magic, its will, whatever the case may be, it held on to the Glaive to act as bait to get Colwyn close, that sort of thing. And so Colwyn is striving, trying to get it to come back, and it's just stuck. And that music is very, especially when you're 4.5 years old, that music was really evocative, right?
It's great now too.
It's phenomenal. And there's a sense of loss. And then he goes after his pet Glaive, and then, then the Beast wakes up. But it wasn't until I read the book that they made it abundantly clear the Glaive wasn't stuck. The Glaive resisted. Like Colwyn called the Glaive, and the Glaive was like, no. But Colwyn, being in the book, they call it a prince of the mind. I'm glad they got away from that, because there's already too many accusations that Krull was trying to be too much a Star Wars alike.
Right.
And the idea that he had this mental willpower, is kind of
some sort of weird magical force to do things.
Yeah. I'm glad they got away from that in the film, but in the book, they talk about him being a prince of the mind. And so he has this certain level of like will. It also talks about how Lissa has a complementary quality to her that is very similar to Colwyn's, but slightly different, right? And so that makes them a match, blah, blah, blah. But he's calling the Glaive back, and he's using his will. And that's why there's a struggle, because the Glaive is trying to resist, but the Glaive is also being forced to obey. And so there's this tug of war going on.
Yeah.
And so when you watch that scene again with that in mind, and maybe this doesn't change your experience, because your experience sounds like it was in line with what the intent was. But when I was younger, I thought it was stuck. And then I watched the scene again, and it's this, to your point, it is a wordless exchange between Colwyn and the Glaive. And when you realize the Glaive is fighting back, that look on Colwyn's face is not failure. That look on Colwyn's face is rejection.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of heartbreak.
Yeah.
Right. because they have like this bond. They have a bond that is psycho-emotional, and it's not just, well, I'm the manager and you're the employee, right? It's there's a symbiotic bond between them.
Yeah.
Now, so let me ask you the next question then.
Yes.
Why did the Glaive resist?
I was going to make a joke about it had to go shopping and it had to do something else. It
time. It's got to wash its hair.
Yeah, it needs its own, like, it needs some,
it's
Glaive
covered
time.
in viscous beast chest.
It's had a really bad day and it wants to just go home. So, thinking about it from thinking about it in the world, right? The Glaive came to Krull to deliver this message about, hey man, you got a beast problem coming. I think at that point is the point where the Glaive knew, okay, Colwyn's got this. My mission is elsewhere now. I'm going to wash my hands of this and just hang out and see what happens, is my assumption. Again, I don't know for sure, but I think that would make the most sense in my brain. Like, if I had to write it, that would be why it's doing that thing.
I think you and I are of a similar mind on that. Because my siblings and I, as we were discussing this in the past, we kind of had this great anagnorisis of our own where it was like, oh my gosh, the reason it's resisting is because it helped Colwyn free Lissa from the cage. It stymied the beast. It knocked down the beast. But what would have happened if Colwyn had retrieved the Glaive at that point? If Colwyn had retrieved the Glaive at that point, he would have kept using it. But then the Glaive, knowing, there's some level of wisdom, some level of sentience, some level of understanding that it has, that it determined that this was not the time to come back. In fact, actually, to your point, it had fulfilled its mission to the degree it needed to.
Yeah.
But because the Glaive did not return, and the Glaive also did not become a weapon of the beast either, right? But because the Glaive didn't return, what happens next in the film?
He uses fire out of his hands.
Yeah, before that though.
Oh, they run?
Well, they run, right? And then they get to the center of the fortress, or they get
to the center of the fortress, and they realize that they run away from the center of the fortress. He's too powerful in the center of the fortress.
Yeah.
They get married. They finish their wedding vows. And then they become the all-powerful couple that rules the galaxy.
Yeah. They have this moment where Lissa's like, it's not the Glaive, it's you. And then Colwyn goes, it's not me, it's us.
Yeah.
And then they have this great epiphany of, it will not return to me except by the hand of the woman that I choose as my bride, And then, and this is where we get into a concept that my siblings and we realize that in the end, Krull is really about the beauty of like the yin and the yang of natural forces, right?
Yeah.
That earlier I was talking about how the Glaive needs to be wielded by a man. I remember I was watching this, and then my sister's sister-in-law was there, and they talk about like the Glaive can be a powerful weapon in the hands of the right man. And then she spoke up and she said, or woman. And then my sister and I both looked at her and we go, no. And it's because we'd already had this conversation. The Glaive is not about equality in and of itself. The Glaive itself is about giving a power to the other half of this yin yang style force. The woman is already powerful enough because of other things that we've talked about in the past, right? But the man does not yet have his full power. And so the Glaive is there as sort of like almost like training wheels to discover that fullness of power, right?
You need this to,
But then the Glaive is lost. And that's where them together, the Glaive was really just holding Lissa's place until Lissa was available. Right? Because together is where they form their ultimate union. To your point, they finish their vows. But also, we've come up with this notion of like the bearer of the flame and the wielder of the flame. It's this yin yang power, right? And she can bear the flame, but for the reasons of the natural order, she cannot wield it. He can wield the flame, but for reasons of natural order, he can't bear it.
Yeah, he doesn't have it. Yeah.
So they need each other. And together, they become an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
And so I think the Glaive understanding the nature of the planet. It had a long time to like understand the planet while it was sitting in the magma
Just sitting in the lava, yeah, thinking about what's
sitting in
going
the
on.
mountain in Italy. But anyway, so it understood in some way, on some level, that now in order for them to fulfill the prophecy, the Glaive needed to like step out of the picture.
Yes.
We're getting to the very end of this. I have just a couple more quick questions, and then we'll get to the wrap up if you don't mind.
Go for it. And I've still got a good surprise for you. So
I know there's like a surprise that I've put off for 2 hours.
You have. I think you're stalling.
I probably a little bit. In 3 more minutes or so, it'll be the length of the film Krull. Anyway,
well, we got to hit that.
We got to hit that. I see behind you a number of like little collectible items, a little bit of Krull memorabilia, which I think is phenomenal. I love seeing it. It makes me so very happy. That poster is a very, very special poster, by the way. The poster, in fact, Connor, if you'll slide to the side for those who can't see, this poster features a planet bathed in red with twin suns coming over the horizon. And it has a really interesting description at the top. But this poster was the promotional poster. It was printed in 82, leading up to the film's theatrical release in 83.
That is correct. And this is an original.
Thank you very much. An original. That's
it's my favorite piece of Krull thing that I have. I like the Atari game. I like the comic books. I actually have 2 copies of this one right here. But this poster, I think, is my favorite thing that I've got.
That was exactly what I was going to ask, which is, what is your favorite piece of Krull memorabilia that you own?
As of right now, until I make my replica Glaive, this is my favorite.
Where did you get that poster? It's a rare find.
It is. I remember looking on, I think I got it on eBay, if I recall correctly. And I spent a little bit of time looking and just kind of like waiting for a good Krull poster. It was probably 4 or 5 years before I found one that I wanted, like an actual old one. It's been one of my prized possessions ever since. I love it.
It's a great piece.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I love that there's like almost nothing about the movie on there. Like we get the Glaive in the name, but this doesn't show up in the film. This is just a thing for the poster.
I mean, it's got twin suns.
Well, yeah, but like that shot isn't in the movie.
No, it's not in the movie.
They just made that for this. And I think that's great.
I'm glad they got, I don't know why it's red, but it's red.
Super cool.
In the movie, it's like the planet Endor. It's so green.
Again, what a great shot, right?
It's a phenomenal shot. It's one of the most underappreciated shots in all of cinema. In my opinion.
Are still a half dozen films. Again, this doesn't mean anything unless you know who I am personally, but like I love movies and how they're made. I love being like, oh yeah, model shot, blue screen, yada, yada, yada. There are shots in Krull that still kind of stump me, and I love that. That planet shot is one of them. It's probably a projection, but it's got 3D mountains, so it can't be that. And yeah, I love the film.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. I guess the next and final question would be, when are you coming back to Utah?
As soon as I can. As soon as I can. We got to watch
2025. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, we still got a few months in 2024. We can make something happen. I'm sure
we can make those work.
Yeah, it's only 8 hours away.
You're invited.
Well, thank you. I accept your invite gladly.
Well, then before we put the cherry on top and wrap this show up, is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
There sure is. All right, friends. Those of you listening at home, the professor here has no idea what's about to happen. I have in front of me the Krulltimate notebook. So, Krebs, we have a 10-question trivia quiz for you based on the film Krull.
Oh, no.
Those of you at home,
am I the #1 fan?
Answer your questions also and see how well you do. These range from easy to difficult to very difficult. Now,
I'm so excited. I hope I get all 10 right. If I don't, does that ruin my efficacy on the show?
My purpose of this is to show how far I have to go to stump you, to impress the audience, not to make you look bad on your own show. That's not the goal here. I expect you to get most of these correct.
That sounds okay.
Okay.
All right.
Question 1. This question is worth as many points as the Glaive has.
5.
Correct. Question 2. How many times does Ergo transform and into what?
He transforms into a goose. He transforms into a piglet. He transforms into a beagle. And he transforms into a tiger.
That is correct. 4 times. Goose, pig, puppy, tiger. Question number 3. How many locations is the Black Fortress seen in during the events of this film?
Oh, now that's going to be tricky. So do you include the intro in the film?
I do. I do include the space
Is
shot.
that considered
Base is one. Yes.
That's one. Okay. And then the Slayer's exiting the fortress, which is actually just a reverse shot.
Correct. Which is technically the valley it lands in. I'll give you that as
the
number
valley
2.
it lands in. So that's the landing.
Yeah.
That's the, yeah. And then we see when they retrieve Lissa, it's actually the forward shot that they used for the reverse shot previously.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
still
know.
in the valley it lands in, like physical locations
we're just
on the
talking
planet.
Like locations?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So then it transports to the tundra. And then it transports to the Iron Desert. And then it transports to the meadow.
To the final valley. That is correct. Fantastic. Well, so far, 3 correct. Number 4, question 4. How far can fire mares travel in a single day?
1,000 leagues.
1,000 leagues, which is I think like 145 miles an hour. If my vague math is correct.
Oh, I haven't even done the math. If you'd asked me that, I would have died.
Okay.
I'd be like, hang on.
Question 5.
Question 5, only halfway. Oh my gosh.
What crest is on the door of the wedding ceremony room?
So of the Eirigs, it's like this bear boar thing.
Yes. Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
This is a 3-part question. All fill blank. Okay. Part 1. Blank, it was given me to know.
This.
Yes. Part 2. I don't think I like your blank, old man.
Relatives.
Yes.
Which is one of the best underappreciated lines in the film.
I love that line. I almost brought it up earlier, but I didn't want to ruin the trivia question for you. Okay.
Death and power are close cousins.
I don't think I like your relatives, old man. Question 3. Part 3.
Okay.
Blank.
Okay. It could be a few things. One of them is Lissa.
That's good.
That's one. Lissa. Let's see. Blank.
This one we have talked about today.
This one. Oh God. Ignorance.
That's also good. But the answer I was looking for was.
Wait. Can you give me a clue?
Keegan.
Hello.
There you go. Correct. I'll accept all 3 answers, though.
The great one-word one-liners.
Hello. Okay. Question 7. How many men did King Turold lose traveling to King Eirig's castle?
We lost 300.
Yes. Phenomenal. Okay. Question 8. You're doing fantastically so far. What dispute caused Ergo's hasty departure before arriving in a forest near the Granite Mountains 1,000 miles off course?
There seemed to be a dispute about a gooseberry pie that a man left sitting on the windowsill.
Yeah, what did he expect?
What did he expect?
Perhaps he expected to eat it. Also, interesting, they measure both miles and leagues in this world.
Yes. Well, and so do we, right? With,
to be fair,
miles, nautical miles, kilometers, leagues.
That is correct. Question 9. What color eyes does the beast have?
They are red with vertical black slit pupils.
That is correct. All right. Final question. It's a 2-parter.
Oh, no.
Okay. So, there's a character.
The beast was played by a woman.
You're right. Not the question, but you're right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. No, that's fair.
So, the first part is a character is referenced by Titch. His name is blank. He visits the seer sometimes. He doesn't speak much.
This is Rell.
Part 2. During the events of the film, how many words does Rell say?
What? Okay. Let's see what we can do.
How many words does Rell say in the film Krull? How many individual words? We're not counting grunts or screams, and fire mares counts as 1 word, not 2.
Yes. Okay. Fire mares counts as one word, not
One,
two.
not two. Yeah.
Aren't they? Isn't it technically one or two words?
I think
No.
it's.
Okay.
I think as a name of fire mares, it's one word. If it
Okay.
is
We're gonna
two,
stick with that.
I've got the. I wrote down every line he speaks in the film on this piece of paper, so I've got the count.
Ergo walks up and he goes, "My name is Ergo the Magnificent."
That's the first line he says in the film.
Magnificent.
That's 2 words. You're right.
Or merely jest with those who already are his friends.
Okay.
Is that 12 now? Is that what we're saying?
I
lost
do you want
count.
me to correct you as you go?
Keep track of it. Keep track of it.
Okay.
Or merely jest with those. Let's see. Or merely jest with those who already are his. Yeah, with those who already are his friends. No. Okay. Anyway.
So far, I'm astonished that you got both of these lines so accurately.
Okay, so you'll correct me in the end.
Yes.
Oh, it's all very fine being Poland. Your actions give you weight, my friend. I saw you save the boy from the spear.
This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. All right. All right.
And then Ergo, well, that's what friends do for one another. Indeed.
Okay.
And then Colwyn says, "You've been following us for some time, since the beginning." That's 3 more. I hope you're keeping a tally.
I am. I'm writing down everything that you're saying.
Since the beginning. And then Colwyn says, "Well, then join us. All men need company." And he says, "Yes, all men." And then we move on from there. This is where it's going to get harder.
I'm still amazed by this so far.
I've got to know all of Rell's lines. Okay. All right. So then they are proceeding through. They don't know the changeling has already taken shape, and then we get to the point where Rell says ignorance, but no, that hasn't happened yet. Because he's carrying Titch on his shoulders, but this is after Titch's loss, if I remember correctly, because he's talking about the pup. No, maybe it is. They're talking about wishes. Rell, the changeling, and then, okay, there's a point at which Rell says, "I will stay back." What does he say? "I will stay." He says, "I will stay," and then they proceed forward. And then he sees the seer's body, and then he chases, and then
how did you know?
And then Ynir says, "How did you know?" And Rell, with downcast eye, because you know that he had a friendship with the Emerald Seer, he goes, "I found the seer's body in the quicksand." Oh, I missed the line. Where Rell says, "When I heard that the old one had come down from the mountains, I knew the time had come."
Yes.
I missed that line.
I'll count it now, though, because you still got it.
Okay. Then they're walking through and they're talking about wishes, and then he says ignorance, and then and then and let me think about this for a second. After he says ignorance, we don't hear Rell again for some time. And
chronologically, since you've already said all these lines,
you're right.
Ignorance, and then I will stay, and then I found the seer's body in quicksand,
okay,
and then you're right. There's a big gap of lines.
After.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we got those in the right order. Yep. We got those in the right order. Thank you for that little assistance.
I am just, first of all, I kind of designed this with the intention of stumping you, and you've already blown through most of them correctly.
And so then Ynir comes back and dies, and then he goes, "Now we have no way to fight. How are we going to do this? How are we going to reach the Iron Desert? It's 1,000 leagues away. Fire mares can travel 1,000 leagues in a day."
Check.
And then we get to the point where they're trying to capture the fire mares in the valley. And the next line that I remember Rell saying is, the gray one is their leader. And
Yeah.
and then they like wrestle it down, and Colwyn says, gentle as a baby. And that's Colwyn's line. And then they're like settling up, and he's like, and then Colwyn invites him, and then Rell says, I must stay here. And Colwyn goes, is it time? And I don't think, I'm trying to remember if Rell even says anything. He says, he basically tells him, yeah, I'm thinking about what Rell says. Sorry, I'm working through it. Hang on.
It's okay. So you're watching the movie in your head. I can see it.
I really am. And then he goes, I must remain here. That's what he says. I must remain here. And then Colwyn says, when he realizes what the truth is, Colwyn says, stay here, Rell. You've done enough. And then Ergo walks up and he goes, Rell, I'll ride with you. And he looks at me and he goes, I must remain here, my friend. And then Ergo looks at him and says, we had no time, which is exactly what you and I say at the end of every one of our visits.
Time. That's correct.
We had no time. And then we don't hear from Rell again until he arrives at the Black Fortress, is climbing the mountain, not including grunts and being shot.
Mm-hmm.
But he holds the door and he goes, he grabs the door, and people start passing in underneath him. I'm trying to remember if he says the word hurry or not, but before he dies, he says, wait. And then he ends up getting crushed, gurgle, gurgle. And that is the end of Rell.
You only missed like 4 lines.
I missed 4 lines?
Okay, so to be fair, you said, or merely jest with those who already are his friends. The technical line is, or jest with those who already are his friends. So you added a word
so
there.
merely's not there.
Yep. The next one you got sideways. Instead of indeed, he says, quite so.
Quite so.
Since the beginning, when I learned that the old one had come down, I knew it was the time would come, yada, yada, yada. You got everything else perfect. He does hand Titch to Keegan and say, take good care of him.
That's right. And that's where Keegan goes, isn't he coming with us?
Yes, correct. And Titch says, no, yep. And then the next thing he says is when he talks to Colwyn, he grabs the horse and says, whoa, steady, I must remain here. Each to his fate.
He
is the one line that you missed. Yes.
And that's such a good line. It's one of my favorite lines in the movie. Ynir says it. Torquil says it to reinforce Ynir.
Yep.
Colwyn says it to Rell, and Rell says it to Colwyn.
Correct. And then while Rell dies, his last 2 lines are, it's no use, it's my time.
Oh, he does say it's no use. I didn't, but it's my time. I don't think I ever caught. It's no use.
He squeezes it out right at the end there for a total of 109 words.
Wow.
And you got 104 of them correct, which is
I got
astonishing. Astonishing.
Okay.
I'll give you one last bonus question, which might be kind of a...
I like this game. I should have you on the show more often.
Yeah, I'll think of more questions for next time. Bonus question. How many named characters aren't human?
Do we consider the Beast the name?
Yeah, I would consider in the context of this, the Beast is the character's name.
What constitutes as a named character? Do they have to... Oh, they do say the name. Okay, yeah. Okay. Like, I was going to ask, what if the character has a name, but they don't say it in the film?
It would be a named character. If the character is named, how many named characters aren't human?
The Crystal Spider is a named character.
Uh-huh.
Rell the Cyclops.
Okay.
The Beast.
Okay.
Do we want to say the Slayers just collectively?
Do
we care about the Slayers?
Yeah, I consider them more of like background army
label?
characters. I feel like named characters have like dialogue and an important role.
Okay. And I'm going to consider the Changeling the same as the Slayers in that it is a Changeling, but it's not like a specific Changeling.
Sure. Yeah, not Ted the Changeling.
Okay, but Vela the Changeling,
yes,
is not human.
Correct.
At least not anymore. Let me think through this for a second. I think those are the obvious ones. The Glaive is named and is, I would consider, a character and not human.
Sure.
Do you consider the planet Krull a named character in the film?
I think it's a place, not a character.
Okay, we'll go with that. I'm running through it. You obviously have something in mind I haven't hit yet.
I do. I have an answer that I'm looking for that you haven't gotten, but you might not get it because it's kind of a.
Ooh. Now I have to get it, right? Look, okay, so Ynir and the Widow we consider humans.
Sure.
Because they're citizens of Krull natively, and they're humanoid, right? Okay, so let me think about this for a second. Hang on. Named characters, not human. We don't hear a name for the horse, so I'm not going to count that. And I don't remember them naming their weapons, but wait.
Okay, I'll wait.
I might be out of answers, actually.
Well, the answer I was looking for is all of them. This is Krull, not Earth. They're all aliens. None of them are human. Nobody in the movie's a human.
I should have gone with that. As I was describing, I was like, well, they're humanoid.
Yeah, they're not humans.
They're not humans.
That's
You're
the answer
right.
I was looking for.
You're right.
You aced every single one of those, I'm going to say. So next time, I'm going to have to make them a whole lot harder.
I am so excited. Next time, I'll have to come up with a quiz for you.
Yeah, please do. Again, my goal was to show how far I have to go to stump you, and I didn't stump you, so I'm going to have to double the efforts for the next round of
that
trivia.
Sounds fantastic.
Krull trivia.
Sir Connor Anderson, unofficial title. It has been a pleasure, as it always is, to spend time with you. I don't know how long this episode/episodes is going to be, but we have been recording for almost 2.5 hours, and that should tell you something.
You have a lot of editing ahead of you. I look forward to listening to this in 5 to 8 months.
So much editing.
Yeah.
There's so much to do. But Connor, it has been an absolute blast and a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so very much for being here, and you will be on the show again in the future.
I hope so. I will always make time to talk to you about anything, but especially Krull. 2.5 hours, but still, we had no time.
We had no time. I will have you know that the only reason this show exists is because you and I went out to sushi one time, and it changed everything.
Sushi is responsible for a lot of good things in this world, and I'm glad this is one of them.
And with that, my friends, thank you very much for listening to this show, and we will hang out with you again next time.
You heard him. We're now an army.
Thank you so very much for listening to this episode of the Krulltimate Podcast. Now, I would like to hear from you. If you have any questions, curiosities, or comments that you would like to make about this or other episodes, you can send them to thekrulltimatefandom@gmail.com. Until next time, I have been your host, Professor Krebs, and this is the Krulltimate Podcast.